For context for our listeners, Laura played in 3 World Cups for Ireland, over 30 caps for Ireland as well. She was part of Ireland's first ever women's Grand Slam team in 2013, and that was the same year that she was crowned West Cork Sports Star of the Year. Also won a lot of interpros at Munster and was Munster women's head coach as well for a couple of seasons. And they're just some of the headlines from a remarkable rugby career for Laura. But Laura, before we talk about Grand Slams and all that, can you take me back to the start of your rugby adventure? Because the rugby scene in West Cork then was a lot different to what we have now. Nowadays, there's so many Munster players in the men's and women's teams and also Irish internationals in both. But what was the West Cork rugby scene like when you started off?
Yeah, and equally nowadays, you have underage rugby in most of the clubs in West Cork as well, which, was unheard of for girls. But I started back in Clonakilty. I suppose I was 16 and was playing a bit of everything. And I was mad keen for any sport, really. And it was just a chance conversation, I suppose, on the way home from playing soccer with somebody. And she was just saying, I'm going to rugby training now, do you want to come along? And I said, sure, why not? And my home house is probably 500 metres away from Clonakilty Rugby Club, so it kind of was an easy enough commute, and it was an easy enough start, if you like, and there was a great group of people in Clonakilty at the time, and Clon was very fortunate as well, because I wasn't the only international in Clon. Even just before I was kept, Emer O'Sullivan and myself were there at the same time a bit, but Maeve Quirk was playing her club rugby in Limerick, fair enough, but she was Clan's first Irish international, which was huge as well, absolutely massive really when you look back.
And what was it that clicked for you? Like you said, like you dabbled in so many different sports, but then it was rugby that you fell in love with. And I think almost a hat tip here, was it Anne O'Mahony from Shannon Vale who told me before she was the woman who introduced you to rugby. But what was it about rugby that you decided, oh yeah, this is the sport for me?
Yeah, that was it. Anne was a good friend of mine actually, and she was very good to me. And she was playing 10 for Clan at the time, but she was playing everything. And likewise, I just thoroughly enjoyed sport. But I don't know, there was something that bit different about rugby. I suppose at times I was, maybe too physical in the wrong direction for a camogie or a hockey, where again that you're probably in the non-contact zone really. And I don't know, there was just something very thrilling, I suppose, of your body on the line as well as a bit of skill and different bits. And we just had fun. And I do think for any child starting any sport at this stage, I think key to it is fun. And if you enjoy it, you'll stick. And do you know what? It was the start of an incredible time, really. And I just absolutely adored it. And it was fortunate then, I suppose, that I went on to play Munster Senior quite quickly. And then just it snowballed, if you like. And I thoroughly enjoyed all of it. Right up to, I suppose, 2014. And 2014, I found for the first time in my entire time playing that it wasn't as easy to find form, or I wasn't playing to the way I wanted to play. And that was the first time I actually kind of said, oh, I don't know about this, I'm not sure. And it was all me. It was nothing like, there wasn't anything drastic kind of wrong. I just found that I wasn't playing the way I had been playing, and I was picking up nigglies, like small little bits, and it was a hard season, if you like. So, I did my best, and I kind of probably knew if I could make a World Cup that would be it. And I got a bit of a fairy tale, if you like, in that I was very lucky because I came home from the World Cup still in good shape, and I had an opportunity to play with Munster once more, and I actually got the opportunity to captain them, and I just felt, you know what, this is probably the top of that roller coaster again. And life's full of roller coasters. I think sport is the same. And for me, I kind of just said, I don't know how far back up I'm going to be able to get, and if I go down, so be it. But I'd be kind of annoyed, I suppose, to finish sort of disliking it. So instead, I count myself very fortunate. I got to call time when it suited me, and I called time when I still loved it, as opposed to I'm hurt and I can't play anymore, I'm forced, or I'm not selected, or I'm going through a period of form where it's just not happening anymore. And, that might have happened to me if I stayed, but I kind of knew that it was important to finish where I still loved it. And, even like I still look back and I still look out now and I'm kind of saying, geez, I'd love to be out playing. Not sure about all the time and commitment and whatever, but the actual playing the match, I kind of would love it still. But thankfully, I'm sensible enough to realise that while I might like it, my body mightn't.
Before you bowed out, Laura, like you said there, 2014, like when you were making that decision, you packed in so much to your career, whether it was with Munster or Ireland, like I was saying at the start. But go back again, take us back to the start when you were actually kind of spotted by the Irish manager at the time, Philip Doyle, when you were only 17. Like you were brought into the Irish panel when you were actually too young to play international. Is that right?
Yeah, I think to be fair, I had played a match. Munster were playing a touring side, and I played a match in Shannon, and he was down watching, and I think he invited me in, not knowing my age, if you like. And at the time there was a stipulation that front five couldn't play if they were under 18 for Ireland. I think that has changed since, and Bevan Parsons of course played at 16 probably, but there was a stipulation, and he was unaware, I suppose, of my age at the time. So I got invited in, and I count myself very fortunate and very lucky. I got to experience the training without the pressure of trying to put yourself out there for selection, if you like. It was pretty free in that I was ineligible, so I could train, and nothing was going to be wrong, if you like, as in no matter what I did, it wasn't that I did something incorrect and couldn't get selected because of that. I wasn't in a position to be selected at the time. And when I look back now, there's kind of a good bit of freedom to that. And then, of course, I was very fortunate because a couple of weeks after I turned 18, we went to a European tournament in Toulouse in, I suppose, late April 2004, maybe even just early May. And of course, about a month out from a leaving cert, but sure, I didn't care. But I was very fortunate because I went on tour to the Europeans, a couple of weeks after probably even maybe 7 to 10 days after I turned 18 and became eligible. And I actually wasn't capped out there. I was close to being capped, but I had dislocated an AC joint, and it was sort of still a bit flared, and I didn't get an opportunity to get in the pitch, and while I probably was frustrated with it at the time, it probably also just helped me to kind of keep my head down and keep moving, and reinforce the fact that nothing is guaranteed in sport or in life, and who knows, if I had got capped then, I might have said, oh, this is great, I'm on top of the world, and you never know, I might have not been playing rugby again in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, because I might have thought, oh, that's it, I've done what I was supposed to do now,
When you did get on the pitch, you definitely left your mark. Like I said, 3 World Cups. Was it 2016 Canada, 2006 Canada, then 2010 England, and 2014 in France. When I mentioned World Cups to you, what's the moment or memory that you instantly reach for?
I suppose in ways it is hard to see past that Black Ferns win in 2014. It was indescribable in ways, because nobody thought we had a chance. And there was just a quiet confidence in amongst us, and we were looking forward to it. And I think at all points throughout the entire week, and even leading up to that fixture, I think we thought we would win. And I think people, when you look back, people are a bit like, how did you think you were going to win? No one had beaten them ever, and I don't know what it was, but there was just a confidence. It was not an arrogance. It was just if we can do our job, these are beatable. And it was just thoroughly enjoyable because it was very relaxed. But I think, there was foundations, in other World Cups for that win. And I think we had a couple of hard fixtures against America. We played America twice, in 2010, and beat them once, lost them once. And it was just a really physical battle. And I think those kind of fixtures, they probably prepare you for the likes of a World Cup at the best of times. And I just remember even the support, the Irish support in Marcoussis in France was just unbelievable. Like people getting ferries across. One of the girls, Niamh Kavanagh, had been a bit unlucky. She was in the squad, and the last sort of thing we did before we left for France was we played a sort of a training match against a Welsh side that came to us in Malahide, and she tore her hamstring off the bone and had surgery and wasn't in a position to fly. So instead herself and another West Cork person, if you like, Linda Kennedy, who's down there in Crookhaven, Linda and Niamh jumped in a car and got a ferry across. And, you know, like, it's just those kind of stories, if you like, or those kind of people that just made the journey. I think they all added to our success, and they all added to our feel, you know, even to go back a year previous, like the match in Milan, like, you know, former internationals coming from New Zealand, people came from Canada, New Zealand, you name it, they came from it to get to there. And I just think that all of those, you know, moments added to the memory, if you like. And on pitch it was pretty decent, you know, but it was everything. It was the amount of people there for us and willing us on and wishing us on. And, you know, phones were hopping from people who probably had little enough interest in rugby, but just had interest in us as people, and then became more interested in the rugby, if you like, you know. And just, look, it was a great time for Irish women's rugby.
You've mentioned there in the space of those couple of minutes two of the huge moments in Irish women's rugby, that 17-14 food stage win against the New Zealand in the 2014 World Cup. But let's rewind back to 2013. So St. Patrick's Day over in Italy. I think it was Milan, was it? 6-3
Yeah.
Ireland won away to clinch the historic first Irish women's Grand Slam in the Six Nations, and also wrap up the title as well. To be part of that, Laura, that must have been magical.
Yeah, it was mad actually in ways, because that season, I would have always said that season, it was our first match that actually made that we won the Grand Slam. We hadn't won away in Wales in a while, and it was kind of a funny enough first half performance, and it was a tough win, but it was a really good win, because we, as I say, look, we found it hard to win in Wales for a little bit, and we'd have no real issue against them at home. So it was a really important one, obviously, to get on the mark and get across that line in that fixture. But then the Milan fixture is kind of funny in ways, because, you know, we arrive into Milan and it's sunny and it's nice, and you're looking and you're out in your captain's run, and the pitch is kind of sand based, but you're looking at it and you're saying this is fine. There's not a lot of grass in it, but it's grand. It's you know, it's a nice day. The sun is shining. You know, this will be lovely tomorrow. And, you know, you wake up the following morning and it's snowing, and you're kind of saying, oh God. And we had rain and snow and sleet and dreadful winter Irish conditions, really. And it was a mud bath. But equally, you know, it was the first time there was a Women's Six Nations fixture televised, and I think it was a stroke of luck, is all it happened to be, because if you remember, Ireland lost in Rome for the first time probably in their history the previous day, and I think RTE heard, you know, the women are playing for a Grand Slam, or RTE were informed, I should say, the women are playing for a Grand Slam there tomorrow in Milan. Let's get something out of the weekend, you know, let's go and let's cover it. And you know, it was probably the first time we had media around for a game and things like that, but it ended up that it was brilliant to have caught that piece of history, I suppose, on TV. And, you know, it wasn't probably the most attractive game, but there was plenty of heart in it, and it was, I think, the most exciting 6-3 match I've ever been involved in. But you know, it was on a knife edge for the entire 80 minutes. The Italians were ever improving, and it was probably the start of their, you know, where they're at now was probably started back then. You know, they had been previous to that, they had been sort of maybe not to standard, but they were always improving, and they were a good side then. And, you know, it came down to another famous person who's moved on to bigger and better things since then. But it came down to Joy Neville winning a penalty, you know, where the Italians were probably hoping to get their own penalty and kick for a 6-all draw. But Joy won a penalty in the middle of the pitch around the 22 and in the last play of the game practically. And, you know, in true Joy fashion, you know, she pulled the ball up in the air, and then the whistle goes and the two arms are up in the air, and you kind of never forget that either, you know. And it just was, you know, a remarkable day.
When you're part of a group that achieves so much, especially that Grand Slam, does that bind you together forever? Like, kind of, is that group now, like, are you still very much in contact? Because you shared such a special moment together as a group, and even 10 years on, here we are talking about that first Irish women's rugby Grand Slam. So is that connection still there, and will it always be there, Laura?
You'd kind of hope it is, and it is to a certain extent. You know, we met there recently, or a group of us met after the last home game in Musgrave Park. And we raised the glass for 10 years on, but we also have a WhatsApp group, and it goes every now and again. And at the minute there, it was going this week with Joy's great news of being involved in the first female to ever officiate at a Men's World Cup. And it goes at times, and then it's quiet at other times. But it's really nice when you bump into people and you haven't seen them in a while. And even Fiona Coughlin was inducted into the Rugby Players Ireland Hall of Fame in November, and that was another nice opportunity for us to gather and reminisce a bit, but also catch up a small bit. And I suppose now it's kind of full circle in that most of the people involved have their own families now, and it's nearly lovely to see. Even there was a group of former players, maybe not 2013 exclusively, but former players with all their children, and the children all playing together at that last match. And it's really nice to see. And I suppose the bond is still there in ways, and yet it's similar to, I suppose, school friends and friends that you've been friends with for life, in that it doesn't really matter how often you see each other. When you see each other, you pick up where you left off. And that is kind of something really nice, I have to say, about it,
And even though when you decided that your playing days were over, like your involvement in rugby definitely didn't end there. Like you were, like I said earlier, Munster women's head coach for a spell. That analytical side of the game, that coaching side of the game, did that always appeal to you?
I think it did, really. Yeah, I probably fell into coaching a little bit accidentally, if you like. I did summer camps when I was younger, and that was fine. And I was coaching in school where I'm teaching, and like I kind of enjoyed it there anyway. But I kind of took on the role of player coach in Highfield for a spell as well. And I think that was a really challenging one. And it probably did give me the kind of the feel for it a bit more, because you're directly sort of feeling your coaching, in that whatever it is you're doing or you're telling the players to do, you're actually doing it yourself. And it wasn't without its challenges, but I did enjoy it a lot. And I suppose it was seen nearly as a natural progression in ways that I would stay coaching somehow. And as I say, like I've been coaching a boys team in school, since I started my job pretty much. And then I spent maybe 2 years as a player coach in Highfield. I spent a further season as a coach when I wasn't playing. And then I spent 3 years coaching Munster. And, in ways the coaching is harder, significantly harder than playing. The level of organisation, the people management, the challenges of players not on form. It's an awful lot harder than turning up and just putting in your hour or your hour and a half on the pitch and just doing what you're told. But at the same point, it's very rewarding as well. And I really did enjoy my time at Munster. I was, again, fortunate because, you're only as good as the people you work with around you. And I had a very good backroom team. Each of my 3 years, for the most part, it was people retained. But, we had a great group, and, we prioritised players. We made it a player-centred environment. And it just, like, ideally, I probably would have enjoyed staying involved in coaching and maybe even stay coaching Munster for longer. And then, of course, I had made my decision in the November 19 that I would move away from it. And then, of course, COVID hit and global pandemic, and everyone reevaluates. But I have said for a long time that I do think that the, I suppose, commitment level and the, demand level, just to my point of view, became something that is not suited to somebody who has a career elsewhere. And, I feel, while it's great in ways, you're moving away from the amateur side of the game. You're moving away from the person from Clonakilty who starts playing rugby at 16, can play for Munster and can go on and coach Munster. I just feel that, there's probably just that bit more of a commitment. It's a professional environment without being professional, if you like. And maybe if you're not in a career, maybe if you're in college still, or don't have a family, maybe you can put yourself in that environment and be there. But it just, the commitment required to do it well, it didn't match up with the time I had to offer it, unfortunately, anymore,
does that close the door for you, Laura, going forward? Like, is it something you'd be interested in getting involved in again, coaching at that level? Or like you said there, just because of what's involved in the role and a lot of the stuff that most of us don't even see, all those calls and emails that go on behind the scene. Does that mean for you right now, it's just not feasible, it's just not possible?
I don't think it's possible while working full time in my current employment, if you like. Again, if you like, Munster have had different seasons, or Interpros have had different seasons in different windows. If it was ran entirely throughout the summer, potentially, because being a teacher, I would have the time. But I can't see, like the amount that it had changed, even in the length of time from me playing to finishing playing, and likewise from me finishing playing to starting involved in coaching. Like, it just became more and more and more of time commitment, of a lengthy season, of something always going on in the background, whether it was skill sessions, whether it was gym sessions. To me, it doesn't fit where I'm at, unfortunately, in my life anymore. And as I say, it is unfortunate because I did thoroughly enjoy it. I suppose because I'm not in that frame at the minute. I dabbled a tiny bit there lately in that I was asked, and I did co-commentary and for some of the Six Nations games alongside Michael Corcoran on the radio. And you know what, I really enjoyed it because it required far less time. Obviously, there was just the day of the match and a couple of hours. The bit of prep is different as well, because the bit of prep that you're doing for it is you're doing it because you were doing it anyway. You're sort of already paying attention to everything that's going on. You're already looking at all the squad announcements. So I didn't find there was extra preparation involved in it. And yet, you're sitting there, and you being in journalism, you know full well, like it's a tough place as well. It's not easy, and it's certainly, it was something totally out of my comfort zone, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, I have to say.
And is that actually like to push yourself out of your comfort zone, just to try a new challenge? Is that something that's like, let's go back to the young Laura who was 16, who tried rugby and loved it. Now you tried the co-commentary and you enjoyed it. Do you like challenging yourself, Laura, just pushing yourself outside your boundary and comfort zone just to see what you can do?
Yeah, you could say two things. You could say I like challenging myself, but you could also say I don't know how to say no. But no, I do. I really enjoy. I do enjoy a challenge. Let's face it. I kind of at all times I'm trying to challenge myself. And it came up. I got asked, and I said, okay, I'll try it. And I tried it not knowing would I be good or bad. I tried it not knowing would it be one off or would I be asked again. And you know what, I've kind of embraced it, I suppose. And you're sitting there and you're calling it as you see it. But I was always one of these that was sitting there watching the TV and nearly saying what the commentators were saying anyway. So I suppose it wasn't that I thought it could be good, but it was definitely that I thought, okay, I won't be bad necessarily because I watch enough sport. I have enough interest that I often would be watching a match and saying the same thing the commentator would say and things like that. And you know what, for me, it's not that I'm really involved in the women's game at the minute, but it gave me a connection to it still, which is nice to have,
What's your thoughts on the women's rugby scene in West Cork right now? We have obviously Ireland internationals like in your Breen, Laura Sheehan has been involved with the Munster team this season with Laura, with Enya, with Gillian Coombs and Abby Salter-Townsend, and of course then the Skibbereen women's rugby team have done great things the last couple of years. And Saskia Wycherley went from the Wycherley clan, with the captain of the Ireland under-18 women's team in a couple of games in the Six Nations there a couple of weeks ago. And there's more besides that. So how would you assess the women's rugby in West Cork right now?
I think it's in a really healthy place, I have to say. Even you look at Clonakilty and they have the underage booming. They have multiple teams at underage level. Skib kind of, it feels like I've come from nowhere, but it's years of work really, and it's super to see. Of course, Gillian Coombs has nearly been playing in Ballincollig, but she was Skibbereen based originally, and there's still a lot of talent in Skibbereen and in West Cork in general. And it's just, even the Bantries of the world, they're doing good things, as you say. The Wycherley clan are producing for men's, women's, everything at this stage. But it's really good to see. And I think even, the challenge that I always see is retaining some of these people into adult rugby. Whereas now with Skibbereen having that adult team and with doing well this year, you have a greater chance that there is somewhere for people to go and play. I suppose, you know, the pessimist in me, if you like, or maybe not pessimistic, but the kind of, I don't know, the real world view in me often says that the people that you need to play to keep them teams going, you know, don't really live in that area at the present moment because they're maybe in college, or, you know, they're not quite at the point where they're back working where they're from. So you know, it takes an army, and it takes a huge commitment, but it looks like even at the Celtic Ross Sports Star Awards there this year, it looks like that Skibbereen team have a great bond and have great camaraderie. And I think when you have that, there's people that are, you know, based elsewhere that will travel back to play. And I think if they can keep it, it looks like they have a lot of fun as well, because they were, you know, they were a team that were enjoying themselves there, you know, on that evening, and they were taking their pictures, and they were, you know, they were all attentively listening when their captain spoke when she received their award. And I think that, you know, they seem to have a very good thing, and hopefully it will continue for them, because, you know, it's very much a case of it's hard to do, but it's very hard as well. If you've let a team go, it's really hard to restart it. And, you know, Clonakilty, as I say, are booming at underage level, and haven't had an adult team for a while, and I think potentially are thinking about it again. But, you know, it takes an awful lot to set it up and get it moving, and, you know, more luck to them if they can. But you know, a lot of the girls that, you know, are moving on into bigger and better things, the Enyas, the Lauras, they're not based in West Cork anymore, but I know they have, you know, good roots down there, and so they will be back. And again, they'll be the kind of people who I'm sure will be willing to go back and help people out, or, you know, give a session here or there. And, you know, definitely the talent pool is not dried up yet in West Cork. There's something in the water, goes to more than just rowing, I think.
The Skibbereen team didn't try and sign you up that night. They were on a big registration drive the night of the Celtic Ross West Cork Sports Star Awards. They were approaching Cork Camogie players and so on to try and sign them up. They didn't knock at your door, Laura?
No, I think they had their sights firmly on the Castlehaven GA girls that evening, which was very impressive as well. Even if they got 2 or 3, you know, from something like that, I think that would really help them as well. Again, Castlehaven in a different sport, but they're doing very good things down in West Cork. And, you know, if Skibbereen can grab a couple of players who are also playing some other sport, I think that would be, you know, beneficial for both sports. You know, I think sometimes people now maybe are specializing a bit early as well, and they're saying, you know, oh, I need to play this, and this is my primary focus. I kind of feel, play anything, play everything. And you know, at times you will find things you prefer, and that's perfectly fine, but don't specialize too early, and don't say, oh no, I can only play this because that's the, you know, I'm playing here and that's the commitment I need to give. I think play everything.
And as a rugby fanatic yourself, as a player, coach, co-commentator now, to see the health of West Cork rugby, men's and women's, the likes of what Gavin Coombs is doing. We're going to claim Jack Crowley and Shannon as West Cork as part of this exercise, with the Witchleys, the Coomses, John Hodnett, Cian Hurley, Clon, Inya, Laura. It's just incredible to see the rugby boom in West Cork over the last 10, 15, 20 years. It must make you really proud to see what West Cork is producing.
Absolutely. I just think, you know, for a kind of probably a GA area, and probably a football area, if you like, as well as maybe the rowing. I think it has packed its punch definitely with the rugby. You know, the likes of Bandon Grammar School and what they're doing, even Closh Public and Bantry, they're playing rugby very well for a long time. I know the Witcherleys went to Roscrea, but, you know, they started out in Bantry Rugby Club, you can guarantee it. And I'd say would have been adding to that school, you know, if they had stayed there. But it's really good to see. I mean, I think John Hodnett is a great player, I have to say. You know, he seems to have a bit of everything. And again, you know, Ross Carbery, not really a rugby place, but came through Clonakilty and you know, playing really good rugby with Munster. I feel like Gavin Coombs, I don't know what else he can do in one way to get into an Irish squad again, because he's been in the training squad, but he hasn't been in the match squads, if you like, throughout this Six Nations. But again, I suppose that's the depth of the current Irish setup. And, you know, he's just head down working hard. And I remember seeing Gavin first when he was probably 14 or 15 playing with Bandon Grammar and coming up against my school. And I just thought from the very first time I saw him, I thought, geez, this guy has something. And I think he is a really good advocate for rugby in West Cork. He just seems to have the head down and working hard, and he's had setbacks. He's had injury setbacks. He's won a cap or two and then kind of fallen back out, but he's just continued to work hard and let his performances on the pitch do the talking. Again, he was immense last week, and if Munster can win this weekend, it would be huge. But I think it'll be, again, the likes of those young players, it'll be their performances mean that Munster can or can't win. And Jack Crowley, he's just come from nowhere, if you like, out of 20s pretty much straight into senior. And I think, again, just really good for young people in West Cork to see that. Most of them would even nearly personally know some of those boys, and I think that makes it just that easier to see. And again, it's back to, if you can see, you can be, and it's going to inspire the next generation, I presume, of rugby players, talented rugby players out of West Cork.
And I know you're quite modest, but you were part of that trailblazing pioneer back in your day, Laura. Like you were a local woman from Clon who went to hit the highest of heights with Ireland. Look at what Darren Sweetnam did for men's rugby in West Cork. A young fella from Dunmanway who won the first West Cork band to win an Irish senior international cap. So it's just great to see West Cork rugby has such legendary figures like yourself and Darren who put West Cork rugby on the map. But I just want to thank you for your time. Lovely to pick your brains and reminisce over the last your incredible career. But before I let you go, I have to ask you too about Irish women's rugby right now. And like you said, you are a co-commentator. It was a disappointing Six Nations. What's next for this team? What can we do to get this Irish rugby team back on track? Yeah,
it definitely was. And bottom line is the performances weren't good enough. That's just the reality of where you're at. I've said it for a long time. I think they need to get a hold of the club game and restructure it. And they need to get into universities and create, an easier transition from underage to adult. At present, in female sport, it's well documented that we're losing players, from 16 onwards, and all female sports are losing them. But I think rugby seems to hemorrhage more, and you have people that are really good underage success that in 2 years' time are not playing rugby at all, and I think that's just such a shame. For the first time in our lives, we have people who are 18, 19, 20 who've been playing rugby, girls rugby as well, not just rugby with the boys, but have been playing rugby since they were 10 and 11. And I think it's now that you have to harness them, and you have to give them a route to go to. It's good to see the RFUs seem to have centres of excellence, targeting those players. But I think they need to take control of a college league, and I think they need to restructure their AIL. At present, the club competition in this country isn't to the standard that it needs to be, and then we're not producing players that can play to the international standard. And I think that can't be a surprise if you don't play and practice what you're or close enough to your standard. I don't know how you're going to then turn out and play the best team in the world, and play against them and compete with them. So I hope that the investment of player academy managers and pathway managers and athletic coaches, I hope all that will do what it's supposed to do, which is to improve the standard of player in our country and make them ready to play international senior rugby.
That's a hope we all share, Laura. You've been so kind to your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And just before you leave me as well, can I just say thank you to you and to West Cork Southern Star. You've constantly publicised women's rugby and women's sport, and the 20 by 20 campaign. I don't think the Southern Star needed to look at their work. I think they were already publicising women's sport all the time, whether it was ladies football, rowing, rugby, you name it, you were doing it. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it, Laura. Thanks very much.
Thank you.